All right, welcome back, everyone. Today, we're going to kind of shift gears a little bit and dive into something really, really fascinating. Just imagine for a second that you're sitting across from a newly elected President Trump, and you're handing him like this detailed to-do list, an action plan,
Oh, wow.
the absolute must-dos for his first days back in office. And that's exactly what we're going to be exploring today. We're taking a look at this really interesting action plan that lays out, the most urgent decisions, the most important things facing a returning President Trump.
Yeah, you know what really strikes me about this plan is just how it dives right into the details. Like, it doesn't shy away from those tough issues, everything from tackling inflation to navigating that whole situation with Russia and Ukraine. It's really almost like a masterclass in presidential priorities.
Yeah, it's pretty comprehensive. And before we jump into the specifics, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channels, and let us know what you think down in the comments. All right, so this action plan, it really breaks down the challenges into 7 key areas. We're talking economic recovery, immigration, national security and cybersecurity, the Russia-Ukraine conflict, conflicts in the Middle East, climate and energy policies, domestic infrastructure, and of course, healthcare.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, we got a lot to cover.
It's a full plate.
Yeah, it is. So let's start with something that everyone feels, the economy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this plan really doesn't shy away from those economic realities that a lot of Americans are facing, especially those rising costs and just the struggles that so many people are having to make ends meet. It's not just about numbers, right? It's about how people are feeling that pinch every day.
Absolutely. And so to address that, the plan really zeroes in on tax relief, particularly for those middle-income families. It proposes adjusting those standard deductions and child tax credits, trying to put more money back in people's pockets.
Yeah, and the thinking there is that if families have a little more breathing room financially, they'll spend more, and that can help boost the economy. It's that idea of stimulating growth from the ground up.
Right. But it's not just about helping families. The plan also really emphasizes giving small businesses a boost. We're talking about things like expanded loan programs with those lower interest rates, potentially even grants to help them invest in things like, training for their employees, maybe upgrading their technology.
Yeah, and it's about recognizing that those small businesses, they're a vital part of that economic engine, and helping them thrive. That can create jobs, and it can really ripple outward, strengthening the whole economy.
Absolutely. And here's a fascinating detail that stood out to me. The plan actually talks about bringing manufacturing back to the U.S.
Yeah.
It suggests offering incentives to companies to bring their operations back home, investing in those advanced technologies like robotics and AI to really make American manufacturing competitive.
Yeah, I see that tying into that broader theme of strengthening American industries, bringing jobs back to the U.S. It's that idea of making the country more self-sufficient, a little less reliant on those global supply chains.
Right. Okay, so shifting gears now, let's talk immigration. The plan acknowledges that it's a very complex issue, very, very complex, with strong opinions all over the place. The situation at the southern border, that backlog of asylum cases, that whole debate over legal versus illegal immigration. There's just a lot to unpack.
Yeah, it's a tangled web for sure. And the plan, it takes kind of a multi-pronged approach. It really emphasizes securing the southern border by increasing funding for things like, high-tech surveillance, having more personnel there. And it also aims to streamline that whole process of handling those asylum claims, hopefully reduce that backlog.
Right. So it's about tightening security, but it also talks about shifting to a merit-based system for immigration. And this means prioritizing skilled workers, people with expertise in fields like healthcare, technology, engineering.
Yeah, the idea behind a merit-based system is to try to attract those individuals who can contribute to the economy, fill those crucial gaps in the workforce. But it also raises questions about who gets prioritized and how that might impact families,
It does. The plan also addresses the situation of undocumented immigrants who are already living in the U.S. and it suggests providing legal pathways for those who meet certain criteria, like consistently paying taxes, having a clean record. And it even talks about expanding DACA, that program that protects those who are brought to the country as children from deportation.
Right. And this is a very contentious issue for sure. There are strong arguments on both sides, and it's it's a huge challenge to find solutions that really address all of those concerns, about security, about fairness, and humanitarian considerations.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, let's switch gears again to an area that's become so increasingly important, especially in today's world, national security and cybersecurity. This plan really paints a picture of a world where cyber threats are on the rise. They're coming from, both governments and those independent groups.
Yeah, and it's not just theoretical anymore. We've all seen the headlines, right? Ransomware attacks, data breaches affecting businesses, individuals, and there's even that potential for these attacks to disrupt that critical infrastructure, like power grids and hospitals. It's a serious concern.
It is, it is. And so the plan's response to that is to call for establishing a national cybersecurity command.
Yeah.
Basically, it's like a central hub to coordinate responses to these cyber threats. It's almost like a national defense force, but for the digital world.
Right, right. It's recognizing that cybersecurity is no longer just an IT issue. It's a matter of national security, and it needs that dedicated, that coordinated effort to protect the country's critical infrastructure and all those digital assets.
Right. The plan also emphasizes boosting that funding for cybersecurity training,
Yeah.
upgrading the technology across all those government agencies.
Yeah.
It's really shoring up those defenses, those digital defenses.
Yeah, and it's about recognizing that, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. If one agency has vulnerabilities, it could put the entire government at risk. So strengthening that cybersecurity across the board is absolutely crucial.
It is. And it's not just about acting alone either. The plan calls for greater cooperation with other countries,
Yeah.
particularly when it comes to sharing that intelligence about cyber threats and terrorism.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, cyber threats, they don't respect borders. So, working together with allies to share information, to coordinate those responses, that can be much more effective than trying to go it alone.
Absolutely. And of course, the plan doesn't forget about traditional military strength. It really advocates for that continued investment in cutting-edge technologies, things like hypersonic missiles, which are incredibly fast, very difficult to intercept, and those AI-powered defense systems that can react much more quickly and effectively to threats.
Yeah, and that ties into, that idea of maintaining a strong military presence, being prepared for a whole range of potential conflicts. It's about staying ahead of the curve in terms of those military capabilities, ensuring that the U.S. has the tools it needs to defend itself and its interests around the world.
Right. Wow. We've covered a lot of ground already, from the economy and immigration to national security and cybersecurity.
Uh-huh.
It's clear that this plan is really ambitious, and we're only halfway through.
We are. There's still so much to discuss. So let's shift gears now. Let's move to the global stage and really unpack how this action plan wants to approach some of the world's most pressing conflicts. And a good place to start is that ongoing war in Ukraine.
Yeah, and this plan, it doesn't really sugarcoat the situation there. It acknowledges that instability that Russia's actions have caused, in Europe, the ripple effects on global food and energy prices, the strain it's put on those international alliances.
It's a stark reminder of how quickly a regional conflict can escalate and have those, widespread consequences.
Yeah, it really is. So what does this action plan recommend? Well, it emphasizes the urgent need for a ceasefire. And it suggests using what they call back-channel diplomacy, maybe involving countries like Turkey or India to get those peace talks going.
So it seems to be prioritizing, finding that peaceful resolution through dialogue, even if it has to happen indirectly. Recognizing that direct negotiations might be tough right now, but involving those neutral third parties that might help bridge the divide a little bit.
Right. And it goes even a step further. The plan calls for these broader international peace talks, bringing everybody to the table under the umbrella of the United Nations.
Right. So it's recognizing that a lasting solution that's probably going to require that multilateral approach. It's not just about Russia and Ukraine. It's about that broader international community working together to try to find, a way forward.
Yeah, absolutely. But while, they're pushing for peace, the plan also suggests continuing to provide military and economic aid to Ukraine. But there's kind of a catch. It emphasizes that Ukraine needs to implement those reforms to address corruption.
That's an interesting caveat. It suggests a kind of pragmatic approach, right?
Mm.
Recognizing that aid should be tied to some tangible progress in areas like good governance and accountability.
Yeah.
It's about making sure that the aid is used effectively and that it contributes to a more stable and democratic Ukraine.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. The plan also calls for providing Ukraine with more defensive weapons, and offering training to help them really strengthen their own defenses.
Right. So it seems like it's about empowering Ukraine to protect itself, while simultaneously pursuing that negotiated settlement. It's kind of a two-pronged approach, diplomacy and deterrence.
Okay. And of course, you can't really talk about the Russia-Ukraine conflict without mentioning sanctions.
Mhm.
And the plan's just expanding the sanctions that are already in place, targeting Russian oligarchs, energy exports, those technology transfers.
Yeah, so it's about keeping that pressure on Russia economically and trying to, limit their ability to finance the war. The plan also stresses how important it is to coordinate these sanctions with the European Union to really maximize their impact. It's recognizing that a united front is much more effective than a, kind of piecemeal approach.
Right. Okay, so the plan advocates for this multifaceted strategy in Ukraine, pushing for a ceasefire, supporting Ukraine's defenses, and maintaining that economic pressure on Russia. Now let's turn our attention to another really volatile region, the Middle East.
Yeah. This plan really acknowledges that ongoing turmoil in the Middle East, and it points to, that Israel-Hamas war, the civil wars in Syria and Yemen, and Iran's influence in the region as major sources of that instability.
It's a reminder of how, these conflicts they're all interconnected, and how challenging it is to find, lasting solutions in such a complex environment.
Absolutely. When it comes to that Israel-Palestine conflict, the plan really emphasizes how important it is to support Israel's security. And it recommends continuing that military aid, that intelligence sharing.
Right, but it's not just about military support either. The plan also encourages both sides to really adhere to international humanitarian law, and it calls for mediating those negotiations to try to address, the root causes of that conflict.
That's key. A sustainable solution that requires more than just, military strength. It requires addressing those underlying political, economic, and social issues that really fuel the conflict.
Right. Regarding Iran, the plan takes a pretty firm stance. It recommends expanding sanctions, targeting their oil exports, and the networks that finance groups that they support.
So it suggests that strategy of continuing to isolate Iran economically and diplomatically.
Right. But the plan also recognizes how important it is to strengthen those existing alliances in the region, particularly through the Abraham Accords, which normalize those relations between Israel and several Arab countries.
Yeah, this could be seen as an effort to build that regional coalition to counter Iran's influence.
And importantly, the plan doesn't forget about those humanitarian crises unfolding in the Middle East. It calls for increasing funding for aid to Gaza, Yemen, and Syria, and channeling these funds through those international organizations.
That's a crucial point. Addressing those humanitarian needs, it's not only a moral imperative, but it's also a practical necessity. It's about, alleviating suffering, preventing further destabilization, and creating an environment that's more conducive to long-term peace and development.
Right. It's recognizing that these, really complex situations require a multi-pronged approach, addressing those immediate humanitarian concerns while simultaneously pursuing diplomatic solutions and those strategic alliances. Now, let's shift our focus to a different kind of challenge. Let's talk about climate and energy policies.
Yeah, the plan acknowledges that these issues they're deeply intertwined, impacting, national security, public health, economic growth. It's about recognizing how interconnected all of these systems are and the need for that holistic approach.
Right. It highlights those challenges that the U.S. faces, from that increasing frequency of those extreme weather events to those vulnerabilities that come with, fluctuating energy prices. It paints a picture of a world where climate change is no longer a distant threat, but a present reality with tangible consequences.
So what is this action plan? What does it recommend? Well, it calls for a major investment in those renewable energy sources, things like wind, solar, nuclear power, and it proposes allocating that federal funding to really jumpstart these projects.
And to really encourage the adoption of these technologies, the plan suggests expanding those tax credits for both individuals and businesses who choose to go green.
Mm.
It's about using those financial incentives to make clean energy more appealing, more accessible.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that role that market forces can play in driving that transition to a more sustainable energy future.
Absolutely. But the plan also acknowledges the continued importance of those traditional energy sources, especially in the short term. It calls for increasing domestic oil and gas production as a way to, try to stabilize prices and reduce that reliance on foreign energy sources.
Right. So it's recognizing that the transition to renewable energy, that's going to take time. And in the meantime, ensuring that energy security and affordability, that remains a priority.
It does. The plan also advocates for forming those strategic partnerships to secure access to those rare earth minerals that are essential for manufacturing a lot of these renewable technologies.
Right. So it's about recognizing the importance of those global supply chains and ensuring that the U.S. has access to those resources it needs to build that clean energy future.
Absolutely. And when it comes to climate change, the plan really emphasizes the need to make the nation more resilient to its effects. This means investing in infrastructure projects that can withstand those extreme weather events, and working with states and local governments on things like flood control and wildfire prevention.
Right. It's about taking that proactive approach to mitigate those risks that climate change poses and adapting to those inevitable impacts. It's about recognizing that climate change is already happening and that preparing for its consequences, that's essential.
Yeah, it really is. It's a comprehensive strategy. Tackling both the mitigation of climate change through those investments in renewable energy and that need to adapt to its effects by building more resilient infrastructure.
Yeah.
Now let's move on to an issue that's often described as kind of the backbone of a nation's economy: domestic infrastructure.
Yeah, and the plan kind of paints a pretty stark picture of America's aging infrastructure, suggesting that it's hindering economic growth, posing those safety risks and making the U.S. less competitive globally.
It's a call to action. Recognizing that neglecting infrastructure has real world consequences for businesses, for commuters, and for the overall economy.
So what's the solution? Well, the plan proposes this massive, $2 trillion infrastructure plan. It highlights how urgent it is to repair and modernize those transportation systems, water infrastructure, those broadband networks.
It's about investing in those foundations of a modern, functioning society.
Absolutely. And it's not just about fixing what's broken. The plan emphasizes, incorporating those green technologies and sustainable practices into those infrastructure projects. It's about building for the future, not just the present.
Right. This means creating infrastructure that's not only efficient and reliable, but also environmentally responsible.
Right, and recognizing that importance of digital connectivity, the plan specifically calls for expanding that broadband access, particularly in those rural areas that are often underserved. It's about bridging that digital divide and ensuring that all Americans have access to those opportunities that come with high-speed internet.
Right. This could involve, partnering with those private providers to extend that coverage and offering subsidies to make those broadband services more affordable for low-income households.
Right. These infrastructure investments are positioned as a way to boost that economic productivity, create jobs, and improve that quality of life for all Americans. It's about investing in the future and laying the groundwork for a stronger, more competitive and more equitable society.
Absolutely. We've now covered 6 out of those 7 key areas that are laid out in this action plan. From navigating those global conflicts and addressing climate change to investing in infrastructure and reforming those immigration policies, it's clear that this plan, it sets a very ambitious agenda. But there's one more crucial area that we need to explore: healthcare.
Yeah. Stay tuned as we delve into the plan's recommendations for tackling the complexities of healthcare in the final part of our deep dive.
All right, so we're back, and we've saved, kind of a big one for last. We've explored a lot of ground, but let's talk about something that really hits close to home for just about everyone: healthcare.
Yeah, for sure. And the plan really acknowledges that healthcare costs, they continue to be this major burden for so many Americans, leading to stress, tough choices, even delaying or foregoing care altogether.
Yeah, it's a big problem, and it points to that sheer complexity of the system, the disparities in access and affordability, and just that really urgent need for some kind of reform. So where does this action plan, where does it start? Well, it tackles the ever-soaring cost of prescription drugs head on.
Yeah, one of the key recommendations is allowing Medicare to actually negotiate drug prices directly with those pharmaceutical companies. And that's been, it's been a really hot button issue for years with strong arguments on both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. Supporters argue that it would give Medicare, the government program that provides health insurance to seniors, that it would give them more leverage to negotiate those lower prices, which would save money for both the government and the people that it covers. But then those who are opposed to it, they worry that it could disrupt the pharmaceutical market and stifle that innovation.
Right. It's a complex issue with potential trade-offs, right? Finding that balance between affordability and ensuring that there's that continued development of new drugs. I mean, that's a crucial challenge.
Yeah, it really is. The plan also suggests setting those limits on how much seniors who are enrolled in Medicare, how much they have to pay out of pocket for their medications, and that could be a huge relief for folks who are living on those fixed incomes who really rely heavily on prescription drugs.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that those healthcare costs can be such a significant burden, especially for those vulnerable populations. Protecting seniors from those catastrophic healthcare expenses, that could really improve their financial security and their overall well-being.
Right. And beyond those drug prices, the plan also emphasizes that need to make healthcare more accessible in general. It proposes investing in those community health centers, which often serve as a kind of a safety net for those underserved communities. They provide that essential primary care and those preventive services.
Right. Community health centers, they really play such a vital role in addressing those healthcare disparities. They provide care to millions of people who might otherwise really struggle to access affordable healthcare, especially those in rural areas or underserved urban neighborhoods.
Right. And recognizing the potential of technology, the plan also, pushes for expanding that access to telemedicine, allowing people to consult with healthcare providers remotely.
Yeah.
Using video conferencing.
Yeah, telemedicine, it really has that potential to be a game changer, particularly for those folks in those rural areas who might, have to travel long distances just to see a doctor. It can also make healthcare more convenient and accessible for folks with mobility issues or those really busy schedules.
Yeah, for sure. And finally, the plan really shines a light on the issue of mental health, which is often overlooked. It calls for increased funding for mental health services and for those public awareness campaigns to really try to reduce the stigma surrounding mental health challenges.
Yeah, that's incredibly important. Mental health is just as crucial as physical health, and addressing that growing need for mental health services. I mean, that's essential. Reducing that stigma, that can encourage people to seek help when they need it and really foster a more supportive and understanding environment.
Yeah, it's so important. So taking a step back, what we see in this action plan is a multi-pronged approach to healthcare. It aims to address those costs, expand that access, and prioritize mental health. It's a complex issue, and there's no one-size-fits-all solution, but this plan, it offers some potential paths forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really the essence of what we've been exploring today. This action plan, it lays out a vision for tackling, a really wide array of challenges facing a returning President Trump.
Yeah.
It sets those ambitious goals and it acknowledges those complexities of the issues that we're facing.
Yeah, and it's important to remember that this is just one perspective, and the reality of governing is often far messier, far more unpredictable than than any plan can anticipate.
Oh, absolutely. But what's valuable is that this plan it provides a framework for thinking critically about these issues, understanding those potential solutions, and engaging in those meaningful discussions about the path forward.
Yeah, it really does. And that's what we hope we've achieved in this deep dive. We've taken you behind the scenes of this hypothetical presidential to-do list, offering insights into those complexities of decision making and those potential consequences of those decisions.
Right. So what stood out to you during this deep dive? What do you think would be those most challenging hurdles for returning President Trump? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below, hit that like button, and subscribe to the channel for more insightful deep dives. Thanks for joining us.